Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sons of Sequoia podcast, broadcasting live from Wheat Ridge, Colorado, the home of the champions. It is June 3rd, 2021, and this is our 81st episode, and it is a very special episode because today we have a guest all the way from London, England, travel writer Emily Frost. How are you this morning, Emily?
Hi, I'm good, thank you, although it's my afternoon, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling the morning energy nonetheless.
And Michael, how are you?
I'm doing fine. It's morning in Denver, Colorado, and it's a beautiful day. And I'm excited to welcome our guest and to have a talk with our guest.
Yes, indeed. So would you like to start by telling us just the 100-mile view about yourself, Emily, so that our listeners can sort of wrap their head around the information and knowledge you're about to impart to us over the next hour?
And why I'm here on the podcast. Yes, thank you. I'm Emily Frost. I'm a travel writer largely, as well as digital marketing officer from London. And I write a lot for various different publications about different kind of aspects of travel and some other bits and pieces as well. And I'm here on the podcast because Michael and David came across one of my articles and used it as a basis for a recent episode, which is just one of those lovely serendipitous things that happens in life, which was about mini golf courses. So I think all three of us are big mini golf fans. It turns out we have that in common. But yeah, so obviously it's been a bit of a strange time for me in lockdown, not being able to really properly do any sort of travel writing. But I've made it work. And yeah, I think that's probably a good summary of who I am.
So a year without travel as a travel writer. Did you spend a lot of time looking at your next adventure? Oh, while you were
100%. Yes, I did. So I started off. Oh, sorry, you go.
Oh, and do you know where that's going to be? Where's the first place you'll go?
Well, I do actually, because I think the first place I'll go will be Scotland, the Highlands of Scotland. I've actually just booked that as a trip. I'm going to go with my two best friends. We're going to drive up to probably the Isle of Skye, I think, and just basically explore the Isle of Skye and the Highlands, drive around and stay in some very rural, rustic accommodation, go swimming in the lochs, all of that kind of stuff, because I think what we've all had to do during the pandemic is scale our travel inwards and more localized, more domestic. COVID passports and the like to go and visit. So that's where I'm going to go.
That sounds awesome. I have never been to the Highlands of Scotland. Guys? We're traveling to.
Have you never?
I've been to Edinburgh and Glasgow, but never to. I would love to see. I didn't have time when I was there to explore the wilderness, so I stayed in the cities, which were very beautiful. But I would have liked to see the natural splendor that is northern Scotland.
Yeah, for sure. I have only been to Edinburgh as a child, so I would definitely want to go back there as well.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite places that I've actually ever traveled to. Just everyone was so friendly and nice, and the Royal Mile was nothing but bars and restaurants, so I can wrap my head around that. Well,
it's so cool. It's a lovely city.
Our first trip will be we're going to a wedding. A family member is getting married later this month in the Pacific Northwest, so we'll be staying.
Oh wow.
In Clay Ellum, which is about an hour outside of Seattle. But I'm excited. I don't know if you've ever seen the 1990s television show, Northern Exposure. But they filmed it
I haven't.
In a town called Rosslyn, Washington. And so you can go to Rosslyn, Washington, and it's like you're walking around in that television show. All the landmarks from the little town that was on the television show are still there in Rosslyn, Washington. So we may actually take a little day trip while we're out in the Pacific Northwest and see Rosslyn, Washington. It's very big trees, lots of rain, but it's an enjoyable place, the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that sounds lovely.
the show Northern Exposure was supposed to be a small town in Alaska, in the state of Alaska, where it was very unusual, very unique and separate from other cultures, and they just had their own little culture. And it was a great show. So we really liked it. It was a little bit off center, and we really enjoyed that. So that's going to be fun, and I think they're going to see the Pacific Northwest, which is again a lot of foliage, a lot of dense forests, unlike the desert.
Yeah, definitely. Are you both going to this wedding?
Yes. It's a close family member. My brother, he's getting married, so.
Oh, lovely.
So it's exciting, and I think that a lot of people preempted their wedding plans during 2020, so I feel like they're going to be going like gangbusters for 2021 and beyond.
Like my daughter,
right.
she's going to 5 weddings this summer?
Yeah, she's got a full social calendar.
So yeah, and this will be one of them.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, weddings are a good way to get some travel in. I find
to force
but
yourself to
sadly, I don't
travel.
have any this year. Yeah, for sure.
Where would you like to go that you haven't gone?
Well, I don't know if I mean I don't know how much you guys know about this being in the USA, but we've recently had published our list of travel destinations that we're sort of using a traffic light system here in the UK. So depending on the colour of the destination, it kind of pertains to like what sort of COVID precautions you have to take. So if a country's on the green list, you can go there, and you can go there, and all you need to do is have like a COVID test before and after you get back. And then the red list is just countries where when you arrive back in the UK, you have to quarantine in a hotel. So they're pretty like, unattainable. But one of the countries on the green list is Portugal, which is obviously a huge, a very popular place for Brits to go on holiday as in normal circumstances. But one of the places that I've always wanted to go is a group of islands called the Azores. I don't know if you've heard of them. Mm-hmm. They're just off the coast of Portugal. Well, I say they're quite far off the coast of Portugal, actually. I think they're quite far out into the Atlantic. And obviously they are owned by Portugal. And so I hoped maybe that because they're on the green list, I might be able to go. But because you're having to take these PCR COVID tests, the price is just going through the roof. So it's kind of almost becoming a bit pointless to go. But that's somewhere I would love to go as soon as I'm able. And also Georgia, the country as well, not the state. I would really love to go there too, just because the hiking looks absolutely amazing. Tbilisi, the capital, looks really cool, and just very visually beautiful. So yeah, those are 2 places that are high up on my bucket list.
That's fascinating. My brother works at a chocolate factory, and his boss
oh wow,
takes a month in Tbilisi every year. And he says it's the most beautiful place he's ever been. Yes, and it's his favorite place to travel. Oh. And he basically exclusively travels to Georgia. It's fascinating because I've never heard of anyone going to Georgia except for him until you mentioned going there.
That's so cool. He goes there every single year.
Yeah, he takes I think a month every summer, and he heads out there and he does the hiking, and he says he loves the culture, he loves the people, and he loves the natural wonder that's available to him there.
Oh wow. They also do I've seen one of their sort of popular kind of snacks is like a bread that has cheese and egg kind of baked into it. And
nice.
I mean, you can't go wrong, can you? Just sounds beautiful. So yeah, Georgia, that's definitely on my hit list for sure.
That sounds like the British concoction. What do they call it? A Cornish pasty? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that similar or?
Yes. It is similar. A Cornish pasty is, well, obviously originated from Cornwall, an area of the UK. And it's pastry rather than bread, but it kind of folds around a filling, which is often kind of meat filling, spiced. I think cheese and onion is a very popular one too. But yeah, it is a similar vibe. But I think the Cornish pasty was made, a bit of history for you, as a snack for miners originally, because it has like a crust. And so they would hold the crust to eat it so that their sort of coaly, messy fingers didn't get all over the actual pastry. So they could just hold the crust, and that would be like a buffer for their hands. So yeah, I know that about pasties.
That's on my bucket list. I'm going to eat a Cornish pasty before I pass from this earth.
I'll send you one in the post.
Yeah. Do you have any questions, Michael?
Well, the one thing that we mentioned, and I mentioned to you, Emily, that I thought would be fascinating. I know here we love food. Food is one of the favorite things that it's a social, it's healthy, but when you go to places, what do you look for? Do you look for sites? Do you look for like history, or do you look for culture, society, or food?
Well, that's a good question. I think different answers for different trips, really. Like sometimes a common thing to do in the UK, and I'm sure also in the USA, but for us, obviously, it's easier because we have Europe right on our doorstep. To just go to a different country is much easier than for you guys. It's a much shorter hop across. So what we will do a lot is go for, and this is of course pre-pandemic, is to go for what we call, like a city break or a weekend break. And you just go for a couple of nights and stay in a city and just really kind of hit it hard, see all the sights, do all the things, eat all the food, nightlife. That's one type of trip. But I like to also do some more like slower trips, which I think is what the Scotland trip will end up being, where the focus is more on just being in nature and just like walking, hiking, biking, canoeing, kayaking, swimming, all of those things, and just really kind of soaking it in. So I think I look for all of those things in a travel destination, but it's hard to find one that ticks every single box. But I think different trips have different aims. I did a lovely trip in Italy a few years ago, which was just purely for the scenery, purely for the glamour. We went to the Amalfi Coast, which is just absolutely stunning. It's one of those places where it looks exactly how you want it to look or how you've imagined it looking. It was incredibly crowded though. That's the downside. And that's one of the problems with travel that we're seeing a lot. But obviously it hasn't been lately. And if I could go there now would be a good time. But unfortunately I don't know what list it's on, but I won't be going there anytime soon.
What continents have you? I mean, it sounds like you've been to a lot of places. What area would you like to go to that you haven't been? Like, you have the Pacific. It sounds like you did a lot of Atlantic. What about the Pacific, or South America, or Africa?
Well, yeah, Africa is a continent that I haven't traveled to not even anywhere near extensively. I've only been to Morocco, actually, in Africa, and I actually hitchhiked to Morocco, which was quite an experience.
Where did you hitchhike from?
From the UK.
Okay, so did you get to like Gibraltar and hitch a boat across?
Yeah, essentially, or
Okay.
we went from Algeciras, but yeah, basically. But of course, obviously, we also had to cross the channel from the UK into France, and then through France through Spain, and eventually into Morocco.
So you got across the Mediterranean. I imagine like hitchhiking in the American sense is your thumb out and you're on the road. I was like, don't you have to go across some oceans to get to Morocco?
Or some bays or channels or something.
Yeah, you absolutely do. But what we would do is we would get, we'd get onto the boat, and once we were on the boat, we would like search out our lifts for the next leg of the journey. But we were doing it for charity, so we were able to get like, free tickets and things like that. It was, that was an experience for sure. We didn't hitchhike when we were in Morocco. We drew the line there.
Were you creating
Tangier, which is on the coast?
Were you doing content creation while you were hitchhiking? Like, did you have cameras, or were you writing articles about it for a blog or anything like that? Or was it, we'll do the hitchhike first and then report on it afterward?
Yeah, it was that one really. I was obviously making notes and stuff like that. And but I did that when I was quite young. So that was actually it was when I was at uni, actually, when I was at university. So it was pre my career really starting. But it gave me some good material to fall back on for sure.
Definitely.
But yeah, I would love to travel in Africa. Absolutely would love to. It's absolutely huge. Obviously, I don't know if I know for sure that it's the biggest continent, but I feel like it's, if not the biggest, definitely one of. And there's such diversity from North Africa to to Southeast West. There's just completely different cultures, and I need to, because it's not too far from the UK to get to Africa either. So it would be a fairly easy trip to plan, but that's definitely one to look to the future on. Have either of you ever been?
I've never been to Africa. And maybe someday, I think I might start with the obvious, Marrakesh, Morocco, maybe even Egypt. Well, Egypt has had some political instability. South Africa, and to go to, I don't know, the Democratic Republic of the Congo or Nigeria, I would be a little bit more wary just because of the political situations there. But I feel like it would be kind of cool to just be brave and go headlong there, as long as you had a plan and the right people on the ground to help you. I don't think that there would be anything wrong with that. It's just I would be a little scared about setting up the logistics of going to some place where there are levels of crime and my overall physical safety might be more in doubt.
Yeah, totally. There are definitely some areas of Africa, certainly in the central region, that are quite unstable, and also Somalia and places like that, I know for sure. But I think places like Tanzania, Kenya obviously have a huge tourist industry and safaris and that kind of thing, and of course South Africa as well. But I think Namibia has always appealed to me. It's got that incredible, I think it's called, I don't know how to pronounce it because I guess it's a Dutch derived word, but like Sousaflay or something. It's just a stunning kind of desert scape. And I think it also has the Skeleton Coast, which is just like obviously replete with skeletons that you can just drive past, and it just looks really beautiful. I'd love to go there.
Replete with what type of skeletons?
All sorts. I think mainly animals, but also I think it has, human skeletons would add a slightly more macabre.
Yes, it would be quite a drive, I would say, if the whole coast was human skeletons.
That wouldn't be that nice. But I think it also has shipwrecks as well running down it. So which is obviously quite cool to see, but a little bit sinister. But I think I would love to go there, and places on the west coast like Ghana and the Ivory Coast and places like that.
I would love to go to Ghana and Senegal.
There's so much.
Because I'm a musician and I love Nigerian juju music, but also like the music of, like you said, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Senegal. There's just some great music coming out of there, and I love to see it like where it occurs, not some guy that got famous and was able to travel to the West. That's cool too, the Senegalese musician that's here in Denver at my local theater. But I think it would be sort of more authentic to go to a little club, in Ghana and see the local musicians play there. That would be what I would do on my trip personally.
That sounds like a great trip. Like a trip that could really get out of hand in the best kind of way.
Yes. It's fascinating. We were talking about, when we were discussing what we would talk about today, as a travel writer, there's different ages. Just, my father, Michael, and myself. There's different interests. There's people who like the outdoors, who like physical activity, who may like skiing or snowboarding here in Colorado. And then there's those who don't. And when he was talking about what we could talk about Denver, he was saying, what about the cultural attractions, the art museum, the natural history museum? And I was saying, oh, I think that in London, their museums are better than Denver's. So I know it's
No,
apples and
surely
oranges. I know it's apples and oranges, but being like a cosmopolitan, one of the meccas of culture of the Western world, we're proud of our museums here, and I'm sure that like our Mesoamerican art collection or Indian art collection may be perhaps superior to some of the museums in London. But so when you go to a place, how do you sort of temper as a travel writer, all tastes or all interests? Do you just sort of write articles based on specific interests and then just keep creating content to sort of cover all your bases? Or do you think about, well, some people won't be able to do this?
That's a very good question. I think so. I think there's two kind of streams of content that you kind of have in mind when you go traveling. Or to write about it, you can either err on the side of a very, very niche writing that is about a very specific aspect of a culture or a place that you're visiting, or you can go down the more, to use a very current term, clickbait type of content, which tends to be more listicle format. So I think that's probably more like the one that you guys were reading about, the Crazy Gulf. That's very much like, let's get 9 of these things and put them in one article, and it's good SEO. I mean, obviously the SEO was pretty good because you guys found it straight away. But yeah, there are other articles that I write that are much more focused on certain niches. One of the articles that I've written that I think was most interesting, or that I found most interesting, was one about how I also really am into craft. So I knit and I crochet and that sort of stuff. And I wrote an article about cultures that have like a handicraft, to use a pun intended, woven into their identity. So they're almost like an ancient craft that is still alive and well today and is part of the culture today. And so I looked at things like, I think top of that list is, I don't know if you've ever heard of there's a tribe in the Philippines, called the Kalinga tribe, and their tattoos are sort of world famous for how intricate they are and the meanings they have. And they have this woman, I'm sure she's still alive. I think she's 104 now. She must be 100, something like that. She is the oldest traditional Kalinga tattooist, or certainly the oldest traditional Kalinga tattooist, but she's also, I think, the last one in the world. And I wrote an article where she was kind of like one of my main focuses. And also there's places like the Faroe Islands where knitting is such an important part of their social interaction. So people will get together for knitting groups, and that will be how they socialize, and they form communities, and they form this like beautiful these beautiful patterns of knitting, and those have been passed through generations. So you can go very much down that route with your travel writing, and you just have to accept that it's not necessarily going to be read by everyone. Or you can focus very much on the other kind, which is a more clickbait, listicle type vibe, where you collect lots of things and have one central topic.
Yes, but you could be the queen of knitting and crocheting travel articles. I think I am, to be honest. But there is, millions of people in this world that knit and crochet. And there's a huge Venn diagram of those people that travel. And they say, wow, there's a whole community, there's a whole world out there that enjoys the same passion that I do. And the same overlapping passion. That's the fascinating thing about sort of creating content for the internet. It can be as niche as you want it to be. And there will be people out there that are like, I really identify with this. This speaks
definitely.
to me.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, when you did a whole episode on mini golf, there's some real diehard mini golf fans out there. And I'm sure they absolutely love that episode.
That's the beauty of the internet, because you might have a passion and you might have just a spattering of people around you. But once you get on the internet, the world is a big world. There's a lot of people out there. And a lot of people probably have the same passion you do. All you have to do is connect with them.
It's so true. It's so true.
This is,
And yeah, I think writing is a great way to do that.
and I think discussing travel is great because everyone's reminded of their own travel experiences. Like pales in comparison to the 104-year-old lady doing traditional tattoos that tell a story. But we visited my sister. She was in medical school out in Massachusetts. And we got a hotel. It was just a Holiday Inn. And we check into the hotel. And it happened to be the same weekend as the New England Basket Weavers Society annual gathering.
What are the chances?
And so the whole hotel was filled with craft basket weavers. And in the ballroom, it was filled with handmade baskets that people had made by hand. And everyone in the lobby was talking about basket weaving. And it's just fascinating to see this world where all of a sudden you're like a fly on the wall and everyone around you knows way more about basket weaving than you ever will.
That's so true. I bet that was quite eye-opening for you.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. You walk in the room and there's all these people in the room and you think, oh, okay, no one notices you because they have their basket in front of them. Their basket is a lot more important than you walking through the room. It was fascinating.
Yeah, I can imagine. Were you tempted to take it up yourself?
No, but I was tempted to buy a basket. I just don't know how well baskets would travel. And the handmade baskets look an awful lot like the ones you can buy at Walmart. I don't know what the British equivalent of that is, like Tesco or something.
Yeah, Asda.
Asda. They look like those, but they are hundreds of dollars because someone, weaved the basket. So it was like, oh, this is a nice basket, but I don't know how I'm going to take it back on the plane. And, and a lot of times with handicrafts, it's sort of a personal connection you make with the crafter. That's like one of the reasons you'll buy it. You're not really buying it for value, for money, because the 20 hours they put into it, if they sell it for $500, it's still only $20 an hour or whatever. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. It's something that I have problems with a lot. If I try and sell anything I've made, people either understand as you clearly do that your time has a value or they don't, and you struggle to sell things for that reason. But I understand why you didn't buy a basket.
Yes, I didn't walk into the Holiday Inn expecting to spend half a month's rent on a basket on that trip.
No one ever does.
But if you can buy a basket from someone who made it, that connection, sometimes you're not paying for the basket, you're paying for the connection. And we've done that. We've done that before. My dad used to do it all the time. We used to travel. I remember we used to travel and he would buy Indian blankets from Native American Indians. And my mother would say, what do you do with the blankets? I'll do something with it. So it wasn't about the blanket. It was about buying it from this Indian lady. And so, so we had all these blankets, not a whole lot, but a few of the people that he really liked. So, yeah.
And then you're reminded of them every time you use the blanket. And it just makes it more of a special item to have, for sure.
And when you buy it, and a lot of times they were from people who would weave. They didn't knit, but they were weaving, and it made them so happy to sell what they made to someone that wanted it from them. And so the joy of buying it is also a memory. So you're taking away a memory of a happy encounter, and that's valuable.
Yeah, especially if you do that.
More than worth the money.
It is, especially if you do that when you're traveling as well, because it will, it has that memory attached to the trip, and it makes it really quite a special thing. And you could have had that, David, if only you'd bought a basket.
And I could have given the basket to someone, and every time they looked at the basket, they could have remembered me. And every time I went to their house and looked at the basket, I would have remembered the interaction I had with the basket weaver. It becomes this intricate web of craft culture.
Exactly.
So do you knit or weave or crochet or all of the above?
I don't weave. I mean, I could try, but I crochet and knit mainly. My mum has a shop where she sells, crafts equipment basically, and she teaches classes, and sometimes I teach there as well. So I've kind of inherited those skills from my mum.
Do you have an Etsy page you want to? Do you have an Etsy page you want to shout out for anyone that wants any of your handiwork?
I do have an Etsy page, but no, it sounds like I've planned this, isn't it?
No, not at all, not at all. This is organic. It's organic.
I do. Shall I say it, or?
Yes, of course.
We can put it.
Absolutely.
I'll put it in the description as well of the YouTube video.
Okay, thank you. You don't have to. That's very kind of you. Yeah, it's not as good as I would love it to be, but I'm working on it. I'm getting there. All these side projects.
Yes, I think that everyone should have side projects because, I don't know, the stuff that you hone with your own hands, it's meaningful in your life. It could be meaningful in the life of others, and it doesn't need to be like what comes out of a factory. In fact, it's better. Like what do the Japanese call it? I'm going to butcher this now. Wabi sabi? Is that it? I'm Googling it. I'm sorry.
I'll take your word for it.
Wabi sabi. I'm getting this wrong.
Good idea.
Wabi sabi. In traditional Japanese aesthetics, wabi sabi is a worldview centered on the acceptance of transience and imperfection. The aesthetic is sometimes described as one of appreciating beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete in nature. It's a concept derived from the Buddhist teaching of the three marks of existence: senboin, specifically impermanence; suffering, ku; and emptiness or absence of self-nature, also ku. So they have the same name. So it's finding beauty in imperfection. When something's crafted in a factory, all the angles and tolerances are perfect. When someone makes something by hand, it has this rustic look, and that gives it more beauty, more of a connection to nature. I was right. It was wabi sabi.
So true.
I thought that was
right, and we laughed.
I thought it was
it
something.
Does sound a bit like wasabi.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
Or shabu.
It something you ate with sushi.
Or shabu shabu.
Yeah. I'm going to take that with me. I like that.
But the imperfections that ties to the actual the person doing it, the imperfection then has meaning and a connection. And so maybe you should tie your Etsy and your crochet with travel, and it just sounds to me like it's all connected.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I've long kind of had a dream of writing a book, actually, which is kind of like a bigger, like an expansion on that article I was talking about, where I basically go and actually do this research and meet these people who do these crafts and like make it into much more than a just 1,000-word article. But that's a pipe dream for the future when we get out of lockdown, if we ever are.
Yeah, travel may be cheaper. It may be easier to go more places, see more people, do more things, and people may be hungry to share their stories after a lockdown.
Yeah, I hope so. It is interesting, actually. I think one of the things I will be fascinated to see is what does happen to travel post-COVID, because I think when we all thought after the first wave, when we all thought it was over, now we look back naively or thinking, I think everyone was, ready to just jump on the next plane to anywhere. But I wonder now that it's gone on for so long, if perhaps people's, the way they process travel has changed.
I do think, for me anyway, one thing that I loved about lockdown was strangers staying 6 feet away from me. I mean, I would take 12 feet. Like, they could double it if they wanted to. And that's one thing about traveling, especially in Europe and in East Asia, that there are lots of crowds in public spaces, especially big tourist attractions, where you're really crammed in like sardines with people at a lot of like museums and that would be one thing that I would be hesitant to get just right back on the horse with travel, is going someplace that's going to be mobbed, where I'll be surrounded shoulder to shoulder with people in an indoor environment. Now, I think that traveling to natural wildernesses, like your trip to the north of Scotland, that may be what people prefer for a bit before the typical haunts become more habitated.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think people are going to be a lot more cautious on the whole. Yeah, and you know, I mean, obviously, so many airlines have had to ground their fleets for such a long time and make so many redundancies. I don't know if, you know, we will be able to just immediately go back to the kind of level of travel we were seeing before. But yeah, I'll be very interested to see how it goes. I don't know how it is in the USA. I don't know if you've had what kind of travel advice you guys have got right now.
I think within the country, it's basically wide open, but a lot of international travel depends on the country that you're traveling to. Coming back, I mean, we've been pretty laissez-faire about how we've handled this. I think that coming back, there's no quarantine process, there's no testing. So, yeah.
Dicey.
Yeah.
But also the United States, in the States, every state is different. So some states are more careful than other states. And then within a state, small towns and then are pretty loose. Bigger cities, you'll see a lot more masks, and it really is variable. And we're in the West, in the wild and woolly West, and so you go out in these small towns, and some of those people they've never worn a mask and they don't care. They're pretty independent, and I'm sure you have that in the small villages and in England as well. You know, they're very independent. Like the Cornwall miners, you know, they're going to do what they do.
You know about them now.
I've never been there, but I did see a documentary on the miners and their food and everything. It was fascinating. And it really struck me that when you travel, I haven't traveled that much. I only have been to a few, just China's all. But one thing I've met a lot of people from other countries, and what I've noticed is that the culture may be different. Maybe their language is different. Maybe their etiquette is different. But down deep, people are pretty much the same. They're nice. True. They're good people. They're friendly. They're supportive, and there's good people everywhere. And that's what's really beautiful about seeing people from other countries. As I haven't traveled much, and like David said, like you said, we're going to be talking to a travel writer, and I really don't like to travel.
Yeah.
Is it that you don't like to travel, or that you just, yeah? I mean, traveling within the USA is like, you know, me traveling within Europe. There's like, it's such a vast country with such different cultures and different landscapes. I would just, you know, if I lived in the USA, I'm sure I'd have left the country a lot fewer times than I have. So I don't blame you.
Well, like I said, I like the destination. I just don't like getting there.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
But actually,
there's nothing like a long haul plane flight.
Yeah, there's a lot of people here who, in their bucket list, they want to like go to every state park in the United States, and that's like almost that's a lot of state parks. It's a big country.
Yeah.
Or they want to go to every baseball stadium, you know. And so there's a lot of diversity just in the United States. So it would take some people a whole lifetime. They'll get a RV, a recreational vehicle, and just and travel all over the place, East Coast to West Coast, which is a couple thousand miles. So it's interesting, even north and south.
Where would you go that you haven't been in the USA? Where's your like top place that you'd like to go?
Where would you like to go, David?
I've been to all the good places. So I would say out of 50 states, I've been to 40 of them. And
wow.
The 9 in the contiguous US that I haven't been to, they're skippable. Now, the one that I haven't been to that's not in the contiguous U.S. is Alaska, which I'd really love to go to Alaska because it's a giant, expansive wilderness. It's like the last frontier. I just haven't made it up there because of distance and cost. So one of the most beautiful places I've been is Hawaii. It's truly just like a tropical paradise, and it just happens to be U.S. soil. And as far as other places within the U.S. that I haven't gone that I'd like to go, I would like to see Puerto Rico, just because it's a territory, but it's also a Caribbean island. So that would be nice to see as well. But Alaska, as far as proper United States, is the one state I haven't been to that I don't consider skippable. Although I've never been to South Dakota either, and it would be interesting to see the Badlands and Mount Rushmore and I mean those sites. But South Dakota is somewhat off-putting to me on a cultural level. It's a little regressive there.
You know, Emily, you've been to you've driven through Death Valley, right? In Arizona,
Yes.
California, and Arizona. It's kind of like when you start on Death Valley, and after you're there for like an hour or so, you go, "It's the same thing." Is there any difference? This is no.
When does it end?
When does it end? You know, and South Dakota is a lot like that. The
Really?
Dakotas. Oh yeah, and Nebraska, but Nebraska's corn. I mean, corn. So
The state tree of
Yeah,
Nebraska.
vast.
The state tree of Nebraska is the telephone pole.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Have you been to Nebraska?
I have been to Nebraska. Yes, there's
I
because
didn't know if you wanted to name check the skippable one.
because it neighbors Colorado. I've driven through Nebraska on my way to someplace better. Not that Nebraska's bad, but that there are better places to visit in America.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm going to alienate myself from 20% of the states in this nation. And I think that no discussion of travel would be complete without getting into arcane politics. So I have to ask you,
Good.
how has Brexit affected your ability to travel internationally?
Oh, getting sweaty palms. Well, it's hard to say, obviously, because I personally didn't vote to leave the EU, but of course the majority did. So that decision obviously happened in 2016, and it's taken 4 or 5 years to really actually, get to a point where we're actually leaving. So, the slowest exit to a party ever. So because that's happened obviously during the pandemic, there hasn't really been a chance for us to see how that has actually affected the process of travel. I feel like what will probably happen is that we'll find a happy medium where it's not going to be as much of a pain as we have to get a visa to go, to EU countries. I don't know that for sure, but I think it will definitely make, because I've traveled a lot through Europe, and often no one asks for your passport if you're going between countries. Maybe that's just the borders that I've crossed. I think there definitely are borders where they would ask for your passport just to see it, but it's so easy to just go through one to the other. You get a train, you can go through them, and I'm not sure how that will end up being after Brexit. I know that it's not going to make it easier, basically. But I've still got, because I renewed my passport quite recently, so I've still got one of the old EU coloured passports. But now everyone that's renewing them now is getting a navy blue one, the Brexit passport.
So are you happy
that there's
to
any difference?
And they'll still look at it and are you upset? This is, I don't like this. I got renewed my passport recently, that you lose the stamps from the old one.
Oh God, it's devastating.
It is pretty devastating because my new one, of course, has 0 stamps in it now. And I feel like I've never been anywhere.
Do you get stamps You don't get stamps within the USA, do you?
No, just the Canada and Mexico borders. They'll stamp. They'll check your passport, and then
Sure.
on air travel anywhere else. I've never actually driven all the way through Mexico, so I wasn't that brave to drive into Guatemala.
That would be pretty amazing. I've never been to Mexico actually, but I would really like to. I really love Central and South America. I feel like that's my kind of favorite part of the world. But yeah, have you been a number of times or just once?
No, I have an opportunity now that COVID's over. A friend of mine just has a place in Costa Rica, so I've never been to Costa Rica, and that's my next, I think, international trip. Just because it's nice to have lodging taken care of, and it's right by the beach, and so that'll probably be my first international trip post COVID.
Okay. But not Mexico.
No, I mean, Mexico is a beautiful country with beautiful people and some of my favorite food. So, I mean, I'll make it back there at some point in time.
Yeah, it is the best food for sure. But what would you say is, because I want to know more about Colorado. What are the things to see in Colorado?
So I was asking
Obviously,
you about.
I know the boulders.
The
the mountains and yeah, but you tell me, because I'll just sound ignorant.
So you've been skiing, haven't you, Michael? I've never been skiing in my life, and I was born here. And people see that as you come to Colorado to ski, but there are hundreds of outdoor activities here that don't involve skiing. So I'm an avid hiker. A lot of people in my family are avid fishers. No one really hunts, but there's hunting here as well. And some of the best river rafting in the world is here in Colorado because we're the headwaters of 4 major rivers. So it all starts in the Rocky Mountains, and we have the Rio Grande, the Platte, the Colorado, and the Arkansas. And they all start in little ponds, 14,000 feet in the air, and they all trickle down into giant raging rivers. Well, as they're trickling down the mountain, you get in a boat and you slide down the mountainside inside a canyon on a river, and it's a real thrill ride. So there's plenty of outdoor activities to do. And Denver, it may not be London, but it's a very cosmopolitan city with 2 million people, maybe closer to 3. I haven't checked the population recently, but so there's plenty of culture, and it's a progressive city. So I would say if you're looking for an urban experience, Denver's the choice, but otherwise, anything west of Denver is where you probably end up being your playground if you go to Colorado. That would be my back of the envelope analysis.
As far as the
outdoor sports.
Outdoor sports, yeah, and actually the outdoors. When you go west, I think people who've never seen the Rocky Mountains, maybe you've seen the Alps, in Switzerland, but you're driving west from the east. And I remember the first time I came into Colorado is that, of course, David was born here, but I was not. And when I came, I remember I says, "Oh, there's clouds. It's gonna be stormy." He says, "Wait a minute, those aren't clouds in the sky. That's the top of the mountains. They are so huge." I go, "Whoa!" And so when you in Denver, you don't. When you get like we're in Golden and Wheat Ridge. You don't really see the mountains. What you see is called the foothills. And so the foothills are really higher than some of the mountains in some of the plains countries. But then as you go up, you begin to realize you go over this hill, then all of a sudden there's another mountain, then another one, then another. It just keeps going up. So they're very, very huge. And it extends from Mexico all the way up into Canada. And it's just massive. And also there's alpine skiing, there's cross country skiing, there's snowshoeing, there's tobogganing, there's skateboarding. Snowboarding. What am I thinking? Yeah, snowboarding. So there's all different kinds of outdoor sports for the snow, and then there's hiking, and then there's rafting. So there's a lot of biking. People do a lot of street bike and also cross country biking. A lot of outdoor stuff, and the history. There is a lot of history, but when we say history, I was thinking about this. Like in London, you have fantastic museums, and we're proud of our museums. They say, look, this is 150 years old. In London, they'll say, yeah, look, this is 1,500 years old. Big difference. So to us, 100, 200 years is whoa, but then that long ago, there was nobody here.
Well, there was native
1,000 years ago.
There was First Nation people, yeah.
First Nation people here, yeah, but there's nothing, and there's ruins. There's ruins that we have down south. We have ruins here too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is one of the things about London is that it is so old. But yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. What's quite interesting about, because I think obviously European capital cities, you've got some that just are absolutely smack you in the face because they're so beautiful, like Paris and Rome. But London is not one of those, I don't think. But I think the difference is that a lot of old European capital cities have like an old town, and that's where the sort of really amazing, beautiful, stunning architecture is, and the ancient history is, and often lots of those bits are pedestrianized. Whereas London doesn't really have that. Like everything in London is kind of mixed in together, and we've got old bits amongst really new bits, and everything's a mismatch. And so I don't think there's one particular bit of London that kind of gives you that wow factor like you get in a lot of other European cities. But London, you have to kind of work a bit harder to like really enjoy it. But you two haven't been, have you?
I have been to London.
Oh, you have? Sorry,
I have.
Michael hasn't been.
Yes.
Right. And what were your impressions?
I enjoyed London. I was doing some work at the time, so I didn't really have time to do all the sightseeing. But I liked it. I went to some pubs. I ate some fried food. Oh. I was in tall buildings in the financial district. I stayed on High Street, Kensington. This is more than 10 years ago. High Street, Kensington. That's where I stayed.
That's very fancy.
And I was there for about 48 hours. So I wish I could have spent more time in London. But that was my only trip to London. So I didn't see it the way a tourist would. So that's my story. I feel like I missed out on the best parts of it.
I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard to, because there are so many different parts of it, and it is basically like a city that's made up of loads of different towns. So you can get a completely different experience depending on which part of London you're in. It's not like a city where there's like these are the top sites and this is this, because everything is very in its own sort of little sections. I live in Camden Town. Do you know anything of Camden?
No.
It's quite an interesting place because it's on the canal. Like we have this canal called Regent's Canal that runs through from West London to East London, or obviously I don't know which way it to the east, obviously, because that's where the coast is. And Camden is on this canal, and it's got 3 locks that make up the sort of sprawl of it. It used to be it's a market now. Like I think it might be the biggest market in London. I think I'll go as far as to say that. But it started off in like the 60s as a sort of arts and crafts place. And now it's grown to being like a huge, Camden Market sells everything you could ever imagine, food and all sorts and that kind of thing. But it's always also been like a real hub of like,
We've lost you, Emily. Bummer. Oh. You're back. You're back.
You're back.
Sorry.
You're back.
That's okay. You said Camden's always been a real hub of, and then you cut out.
Perfect. Sorry. Yeah. It's always, what I said was it's always been a real hub of like alternative culture. So it's had like a really lively music scene. It's a big home of punks. There's some there's a few punks that just live on the bridge over the lock, and they're just there all the time. Like they're never not there. I don't know what they do at night.
Like they're not in a structure, they live on the bridge.
They just live on the bridge, yeah. And they have like, one of them has a sign that says "Help a punk get drunk," and you just give him money, and presumably he uses that for alcohol. But yeah, it's got a huge music heritage as well. There's some really famous venues here that are like sort of some of London's best venues. I live right across the street from one that's like a jazz venue. Amy Winehouse was obviously a real, like a famous local resident, and it's a really fun place. It's quite a touristy place, so it's not really a very normal place to live. But my housemate and I live here because it's convenient for where our jobs are. But it's a very exciting place, and it's really like close to some of London's best green spaces as well. So I think we have a good setup, and it's right by London Zoo. So
nice.
What more could you want?
Yeah, you could look at the animals in the summertime.
You can see a lot of them from outside. You can see from the park. You can get a lot of free zoo.
Oh wow!
Without even paying.
So if you were to have an unlimited amount of money and you could buy a country house anywhere outside of London in the UK, where would it be?
Oh wow, what a question! A country house. I really like. Well, I mean, the Cotswolds is the obvious answer. They're just like a really lovely, beautiful kind of rural part of the country, where it's just like, if you imagine like typical beautiful rolling hillside English countryside, that's the Cotswolds. So I might go there. But I'm from Essex, so yeah, and Essex is obviously in the UK, Essex is famous because there's a TV show about it's a bit like Jersey Shore.
Okay.
Geordie Shore was our.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with MTV's The Challenge. That's one of my guilty pleasure TV shows, and I think they had some Geordie Shore participants in recent seasons.
Yeah, so we have a show like that about Essex, where I'm from, but Essex is actually just a really lovely sort of part of the country, and it's got so much countryside and it's very rural. So a lovely Essex mansion would be just fine for me too.
See, if I were to answer the same question, I sort of set myself up for the question. For Colorado, it would be in a town called Salida. So it's one of the most beautiful places in Colorado, but it's not that close to any skiing. So any place that's beautiful and close to skiing is very developed. So I would choose Salida because I don't ski, so I don't need that. And there's still tracts of land available, still large ranches, hundreds and hundreds of acres with huge ranch houses. So if I had a fictional amount, let's say $100 million, I might go down there and throw some money around and get myself a little ranch. That would be my country house.
But in Salida,
sounds lovely.
In Salida, you look west and you have the whole range of the Collegiate Peaks, which is just gorgeous. And you go down south of Cotopaxi, you have the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, again, which is beautiful. Sangre de Cristo is Spanish for the blood of Christ, because in the morning, I guess, or in the evenings, you have the sun, the mountains just turn red because of the evening sun. It's just beautiful.
And they're all over 14,000 feet. So so they're pretty big mountains. 14,000 feet elevation.
Mountains.
Yeah.
Which 14, all of them, you got bing, 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 bing. And it's beautiful. You're right, David. And the Arkansas River runs right through Salida.
And if you go over the pass, it's the world's, this is fun naturalist fact. It's the world's only alpine wetland desert. So it's alpine because it's above 10,000 feet elevation. It's a wetland because there's so much groundwater that it's a swamp, and it's a desert because they get less than 10 inches of rain a year. So it's this fascinating area for birds and like water species, but there's no rain. It's a fascinating area.
Are you talking about South Park?
The San Luis Valley.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
So
South Park is
that
fascinating too.
That's so interesting.
It's an anomaly.
Yeah.
But South Park is interesting too. You drive through the mountains. Through Kenosha Pass, and all of a sudden you're in the mountains, and then all of a sudden you'd turn a corner, then all of a sudden it's huge. It's just miles and miles of just a flat, what would you call it? Flat valley, right in the middle of the mountains. It's called South
Wow.
Park, and they
South
say,
Park.
yeah, there's a movie or there's a
TV show.
animated TV show called South Park. You probably don't get it in the UK, but anyway, it's a beautiful
Oh, we
country.
do.
Yeah.
Oh, you do. Oh, you do. Okay, it's
Yeah.
from there.
So
That's
Trey
the-
Parker and Matt Stone's the creators of
really?
South Park. They went to high school, not far from where I went to high school, a competing school in the same county. So I would play football. I didn't play football, but my high school would play football games against their high school. That's how close they are. And that's why their show's called South Park, because
Oh.
it made an impression on them.
And there are colorful
wow.
people down there too. Very colorful people all over Colorado.
But not animated.
No.
Not animated. Well, animated in a different way.
In some
Yes.
senses of the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as
Personality.
foul-mouthed, not quite
Oh,
as
that's
animated.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're at an hour, and this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for joining us today, Emily. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's been so interesting. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and is there anything you'd like to say before we go? Maybe one piece of travel advice for all the people out there.
One piece of travel advice. You don't have to go far to travel. I'm going to leave it specifically vague.
Great. So
Very
just
good.
remember that. And we'll put all of your socials in the description of this video and on the podcast description as well. Just so
Thank
people
you.
can check out your writing and, of course, your Etsy page.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes. And
Most
people,
importantly.
they have to visit your Etsy page. You
Yes.
need to have something made by Emily.
Yes.
Oh, thanks. I can't wait for all the customers.
Yes. So I'm playing the outro music, and Michael usually closes the show with his tagline. So do you want to do that for us?
Yes, as we have done today, Sons of Sequoia, keep on talking and listen more than you talk and try to understand what the other person is saying.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.